Hello and welcome to Talk the Walk. I'm Winna Wong. This has been one of the hottest summers the world has ever seen, and it's far from over. From mainland China to the UK and many parts of Europe, temperatures have shot past 40 degrees Celsius, while reports of forest fires and heat strokes have soared. Hong Kong has not been spared either. The mercury is expected to go as high as 38 degrees in the new territories this weekend. Today we speak to Leung, a former assistant director of the Hong Kong Observatory. He's also now a lecturer and climate change expert. He will tell us what to expect here in Hong Kong as the weather becomes more and more extreme. Mr. Leung, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Winna. How are you?
So, Mr. Leung, it's been a very hot 2 weeks here in Hong Kong. The temperatures have been soaring past 30 degrees Celsius easily. I know you have been working in Hong Kong studying climate and weather for many years. In your memory, has it been this hot in Hong Kong ever?
That's an interesting story because my memory is fading, but I can answer that question in two ways. One is objectively, meaning that using scientific data. While we are speaking now, July, there are still 4 days remaining in July, and the Hong Kong Observatory continue to forecast very, very hot weather for the remainder of July. So there is a very high probability that July this year is going to break the all-time record, whether in terms of number of very hot days or in terms of the maximum temperature, average maximum temperature, mean temperature of the month, and so forth and so on. So it is really, really hot. But in terms of, answering the question in a subjective manner, I remember that in 1963, it was a very, very hot year. As a matter of fact, it was a year where we suffered a very severe drought in Hong Kong. So water supply is only available for once every 4 days. And in that day, we only have 4 hours of water supply. So it's a very dry year and also very hot year. So looking at the Hong Kong Observatory statistics, in 1963, we have 37 very hot days. Now that number was shattered in 2020 because we have 47 very hot days in 2020. And then in 2021, we're 54. So all these numbers, record hot days in the past, records have been shattered. But as far as I subjectively is concerned, I felt that those years, it is really, really hot. The reason why is that at that time, when I was a small boy in 1963, we lived in a very poor environment. It was a single-story house, and because of the poor building materials and so on, during the day, because of the strong sunshine, the roof absorbs a lot of heat, and during the night, the heat is released. So we couldn't really sleep. It was like living in an oven. So what I want to say is that the concept of very hot is not just a physical problem. It's not just a scientific problem. It is also related to how well a city is sheltering the people. For example, right now, even in July this month, it is really very hot, but I don't feel that bad because most of the time I am in air-conditioned environment. So what I want to say is that in the old days, when we are less well off, when most of us are very poor, living in poor conditions, the hot conditions can be very severe. The meaning is that natural disasters like heat wave is not going to affect everyone equally. The poor people, the vulnerable people who are living in poor conditions will sort of suffer the most. So that is my answer to your question, Winna.
So looking at information from the Hong Kong Observatory, the city's temperatures on average have been going up 0.31 degrees Celsius. For the past 30 years, every decade it's been going up 0.31 degrees Celsius. Now, when we listen to that, it doesn't sound like a lot. If we add it all together for the past, 30 years, it's not even a 1 degree increase. So can you tell us why this seemingly small increment of increase has such a big impact? Why is this worrying to you?
Yeah, because we're talking about average temperature. Then I have to explain it in terms of the distribution, mathematical distribution, because in 1 year, we have a number of days where temperature are rather low in wintertime and number of days where temperature are very high in summer. And there are also a number of days, many days, where the temperature are kind of average, right? Now that 0.31 degree rise in average temperature every 10 years will have an effect of disturbing that kind of symmetric distribution. In the old days, we used to have similar number of cold days with hot days. Now, with that shift in the average temperature, the whole mathematical distribution is shifted towards the hot side, meaning that it is no longer a symmetrical distribution. It is biased towards the hot side. So what are the consequences? That we are going to have a lot more hot days and even heat wave compared with cold days. Okay, so that is a consequence. That is the significance of 0.1 degrees Celsius.
So Hong Kong is following the worldwide trend where temperatures are going up. So,
yes.
Yeah. So if we're talking about Hong Kong, what do you think, how do we compare in terms of environmental protection and climate change consciousness with the rest of the world?
My gut feeling is that Hong Kong is doing okay. Hong Kong is doing okay. First of all, let me talk about carbon emission. All right. Now, in the year 2005, the average carbon emission per person in Hong Kong is something like 6.2 tons of carbon dioxide every year. But in 2020, it is reduced to 4.5. So that is nearly 30% reduction in carbon dioxide emission. That stands pretty well among neighboring countries, like neighboring cities or countries like Singapore, like Taiwan, like cities in mainland China, like Japan, Korea, and so on. So we are performing pretty well in terms of carbon dioxide reduction. But I have to make a caveat that this is, of course, due to the policy of the government, okay? But we achieve a rather significant reduction in carbon dioxide because there are what we call low-hanging fruits. There are some measures that we can do rather easily. And one of and those measures include changing our fuel mix with a lot more natural gas and a lot less coal. And that will significantly reduce the carbon dioxide. So we don't, average Hong Kong person, we don't need to do a lot of things because the China Light Powering Company and also the Hong Kong Electric switch the fuel from coal to natural gas, and then that will achieve a significant reduction in carbon emission. So that is what I call the easy part. But then if we're going to achieve what we call the net zero, then I think the road, the path ahead is much more difficult because we have done the easy part. What comes next will be more difficult. Okay, so that is about the climate policy. Now about environmental policies, and my concern is mostly about air pollution. Indeed, in that regard, we're also doing pretty well because if we go to the website of EPD, the Environmental Protection Department, they have numbers telling us that the sulfur dioxide, which is one of the worst air pollutants in Hong Kong or in major cities all worldwide, is that From 1990 to 2020, within that 30-year period, the sulfur dioxide concentration has dropped from around 30 units to just a few units. So it is something like a 10-fold reduction in sulfur dioxide. That is very significant. And that applies also to air particulate, because air particulate are those minute particles that we breathe in and will stay inside our lung forever, because that will be very bad to our health. And as far as air particulate is concerned, it also goes down from 60 units, which is microgram per meter cube, to around 30. So we have reduced air particulate by something like 50%. So that is a rather good achievement on the part of the government policies. But I'm sad to say that as far as the average Hong Kongers are concerned, I cannot say that we are doing equally well. And we are very wasteful. And if you go to the countryside, if you go to the Mackley Trail or whatever, you see all kind of rubbish, right? So Hong Kongers in general are not really environmentally conscious. And this is one important part that I think the new government should tackle. Educating the general public so that we can build a better and more, cleaner Hong Kong.
Okay, let me stop you right there. As we go on our break, we've been speaking with climate change expert Mr. Leung. Stay with us, we'll be back.